create a study sourcing. Ministry of Justice, one guy just quit because he had the offices, it was too boring. A few times where just actually what's always best in teams. So then it took me flashing through my team and sort of software engineering.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for the stream as well. The stream is probably more attended than the in-person, but that's post-pandemic meetups for you, or mid-pandemic, I guess, depending on your outlook. It's great to actually have people here, though, that I've not seen either ever or for a while at least. It's what the meetup has always been about, so it's good to have people back. I'm in many different roles tonight, many different hats, no physical hats to swap between, so it may be a bit confusing. I'm here as Sheffield Devops organizer and also speaker, so try and tell the difference, but the Sheffield Devops organizer side of me is a little more professional than the speaker side, so we'll go with that. A bit of housekeeping, there's no fire drills or anything planned. If there's an alarm, it's out the door that you came in, down the stairs, out the back. That's it. There's more than enough pizza at the end, so feel free to help yourselves. And finally, we're always on the lookout for speakers and hosts and sponsors, whether that's a sponsor to just do pizza or a drink sponsor or sponsor an entire event, including venue, like whatever, we're open to it all. The more options we have, the better. What we really, really need is speakers, whether that is full 40, 45-minute talks, a workshop or a demo thing, lightning talks, like 5 or 10-minute quick talks that we can have a couple of in one night, just to break it up a bit. So even if you've never spoken before, or you've not done it for a while, or you're an experienced speaker, please think about presenting, because it's good for us and it's good for you as personal development and all that sort of stuff. So without further ado, I'll hand over to our speaker for this evening, which is me. If you have any questions on the stream, just pop them in the comment box. We'll look at them later. If you have any questions in here, feel free to butt in. You have that luxury. That's why you should be here, not on the stream. Okay, so sorry, and the pizza as well, yeah, and the pizza and the beer. Let's not make them too jealous though, they might get upset. Okay, so this talk is called Paid to Sleep, and it's about making on-call work for you. So this is a little side note from my lawyers. They've asked me to put this in. It's not a pyramid scheme. This getting paid to sleep business, it's not a pyramid scheme. I'm aware that is exactly what someone who was trying to sell you a pyramid scheme would say, but please believe me when I say it. I'm going to talk about not only how to get more sleep, but how to get paid for doing it. So first off, a bit of science courtesy of the doc. If you have interrupted sleep for 3 years, you start to show signs of brain damage. After 10 years, the damage is irreversible. I have this on good authority. This is a conference a few years ago I went to. I can't remember exactly the guy's credentials, but his brother-in-law or his sister or something was a brain surgeon. But it stuck with me as something quite interesting, that something as simple as having a bit of interruption in your sleep at night can have that knock-on effect, so much so that if it's prolonged, it's irreversible and you're stuck with whatever damage has been done. So naturally, as soon as I got back from the conference, I did my own extensive research, as we all would do. I popped it in, does interrupted sleep cause brain damage? And there's a whole host of reports out there. So many different medical studies, websites, everything that have all got pretty good credentials on them. All saying pretty much that, yeah, it's true. And when I'm talking about sleep interruption and deprivation, I'm not talking about anything too extreme. So for anyone that remembers this, I had to check the date, it's nearly 20 years ago. This was the Shattered program on Channel 4, where it's a competition where contestants had to stay awake for as long as they could. And the last one to fall asleep won the money. I think it was like 100 grand or something, not worth it. The winner, the woman who won it, I think she ended up staying awake for about 180 hours in total. And throughout this process, all the contestants, before they dropped out, were having hallucinations, they were depressed, all the bad stuff. Thankfully, that's not quite where we're going with this. We're on about more low-key sleep deprivation. This is your interruption to sleep. Now, sleep deprivation is becoming more and more commonplace, especially so in what you call the gig economy and shift workers. And for me, I would class on call as gig and shift work because your hours aren't set. You may do a lot of hours at a random time and then nothing for the next day and interrupted throughout the night potentially. So I'd call on call shift work. So what a lot of the studies have shown is that your higher level cognition, so language understanding, your planning and your processing of information that you get, and your prefrontal cortex, which handles how your personality works, your decision making, and how you behave and moderate your social behavior, have all been shown to be affected by this interrupted, not necessarily deprived, but interrupted through a long period. Even if you've restored yourself through stimulant countermeasures, is the phrase that they use, which I presume is coffee and other stuff. So yeah, thinking about those things that are affected, your decision making, your personality, your social behavior, like they're fundamentally you, yeah, and that can be affected by essentially being on call if you are being interrupted in your sleep. But the most important one there for me is the decision making and your planning and processing of information. If you are 3 calls into an on-call shift and you get another one, you're not going to be at your best. You're not, and if that's the most important one, you're not going to deal with it in the best way that you could. This is my favorite one. I went down a rabbit hole with this, as you can tell. This one wasn't just about sleep deprivation and interrupted sleep. This was about the inability to switch off from work and how that affects you. So this is the study into extended work availability and its relation with start of day mood and cortisol. So the crux of it, I've put the quote up there. The summary of it is that if you're available, if you make yourself available during non-work hours, you can't consider your time away from work where you are still available as leisure time because you're still on edge and your recovery is constrained and your recovery is restricted. And basically this reinforces what anyone who has done an on-call shift knows. It's very hard to switch off and to relax if you are on call. And basically it boils down to on-call sucks. That's the crux of it. On-call is really bad. There's the annoyance of having just finished working on a call to get another one, come through like 10 minutes later when you've just settled off to sleep. I've heard horror stories, these are secondhand, about being in the middle of nail appointments and pedicures and having a call, being at the gym, also secondhand, obviously, family barbecues. But what can you do if you're on call? You have the choice of either not leaving the house or being on edge wherever you go. They're the 2 choices you have. There's the confusion as your phone rings at 3 a.m, embarrassment when you get buzzed at a restaurant, sadness when you miss your kids' party or a trip to the trampoline park. These are all my personal experiences, these ones. And I left my on-call phone in the taxi when I did eventually get there, so I had to pay 40 quid to get the taxi driver to come back. It was horrible. On top of these, there is also the feeling of dread and the inability to relax that follows you around when you are on call. And of course, there's the fact that you are the most antisocial version of yourself. I always share this image with my wife at Christmas time. I just send it her because it is on call at Christmas, going everywhere with your backpack and RSA keys. So what about me? What about my credentials? So I'm operations manager at Sky Betting and Gaming, part of the Flutter Group. I've got over 10 years in the industry. We'll call that tech, the industry. 3 of those have been spent in a kind of NOC capacity. So like network operations center, looking at alerts and graphs and everything, and then deciding whether to call people out or not, who know more than me. And the rest of the time has been spent being called out in various roles. So network engineering, system administration, incident command, etc. I've been on call as often as 1 in 2. This was working at an ISP as a network engineer, and it was hell. And the on-call was bad as well. And I've gone from several calls per night to none for weeks. And that just reinforces the point about it being like the gig economy. You might have several on-call shifts where you don't get a single call, and then you have a week from hell where you've got multiple per night and you're just wrecked for a long time afterwards. Before that, I managed a bar in the city centre, the Dove and Rainbow. If you've ever been in, if you haven't, do. It's really good. If you have been in, don't tell people not to go in. And I also worked as a Jaeger dude, you know, the shot people in the stag outfit. So I've always been like used to the late night, not necessarily the early morning, but the late night. Early mornings, dad of 2. So now I have late night and early morning. They're better at sleeping now, but it's still not seamless. It hasn't been for years. I don't think I've had a full night's sleep since they were born, really, unless I go away to a conference. Comes down to I'm tired, and I'm used to being tired. And I think I've probably gone over that 10 years where the damage is irreversible. But they're my credentials anyway. Now, before we go any further, there is an elephant in the boardroom that we need to discuss. You should be getting paid a retainer for on-call. Now, in terms of actually getting a call out, whether that's overtime, cash, or time off in lieu, that's a separate thing. But the retainer is as important as the compensation for the time that you spend actually working on fixes. Whether that's weekly, like you're on call this week, so you get paid £200 or whatever, or something added to your salary that says you will do on call as and when required as part of a rota. The retainer is important. If you're not got a retainer for your on call, then that needs sorting out, because you're effectively living your life on the edge for no compensation whatsoever. And the title of this talk is Sleep, Not Paid to Sleep. So being paid to sleep, in my opinion, comes down to 3 simple things. May or may not be that simple. Reliable systems, sane alerting and monitoring, and luck. So we'll start with reliable systems. So I've done a couple of talks on reliable systems and how you make reliable systems, how you build them, how you test them, how you break them, on that topic previously, as well as a blog post which is on the Skybet Gaming technology blog, which is sbg.technology, which is a fancy name, fancy URL. Essentially, reliable systems and building them is a presentation and discipline all of its own. You could talk for hours and hours about this. The short of it is, you don't want your systems to go down, but they will. There's no way you can stop that. Things will break. But if they do break, you want them to do so in a sensible and manageable way. So that's building in things like queues and retries, failover pools, circuit breakers, things that will make it so that if system X over here goes away, system Y is all right instead of crashing and burning. It might not be functioning at peak performance. You might be serving holding pages on, half requests, but at least it's working for the other 50% of requests, and the ones that aren't working are getting some sort of content back. It's also about having the right resources as well as these reliable systems. And when I say systems, I mean computer systems, people systems, whole different ballgame. But this kind of ties into that. The point about the right resources is that you want to minimize the time spent on call out as much as you can. So this is boring stuff like your documentation is up to scratch. A service can't go live without documentation. That seems a pretty safe thing to say, but even in a place, mentioning no names, where that is a rule, you would be surprised at the amount of systems that are live with no documentation. Similarly, documentation isn't just, yeah, we'll put everything on this page, that's our documentation done. Your documentation has to pass what I call the 3 a.m. test. If I wake up groggy 3 in the morning and I look at your documentation that you've written for this system, do I understand it? Do I know exactly where I need to go in this tree of pages that are telling me exactly how the system works? Have I got a cheat sheet of, you see this log line, it means this. You see this error message, try X, Y, Z. If none of those work, do this. You know, it doesn't have to tell me exactly how to do my job, but it has to give me all the information I need to be able to appropriately respond to the incident. And then you need things like training on incident response. So things like weekly fire drills, not the go and line up outside type fire drills and game days, alluding to testing your response as a team, testing your systems response, how things actually work. You can architect something in any particular way and say, yeah, in theory, it's going to do this, but when you actually test it out, it doesn't. So you need to make sure that's all sorted. And like I say as well, the people side of things, you need to make sure that the teams you have responding actually understand the systems in a real life scenario before it is actually real life. And I put in here about Dirt Week because these are brilliant. I don't know if anyone's heard of Dirt Week, but it's something that Google do. And they have 1 week a year where essentially if you are an engineer on call, you may receive a random test call from a manager that will say, the core database has gone down, how do you resolve it? And you have to stop what you're doing and talk through on the phone how you would resolve it. It's not meant to like spook people, it's meant to get them used to responding quickly. And it's not meant to breed complacency either. There's a lot of criticism for things like fire drills because people think, oh yeah, it's just going through the motions. And you know, when that time actually comes to deal with a proper incident, you're going to think, oh, I've got bags of time because when I did this in a fire drill, it was fine. We just said, oh, okay, you didn't fix it in an hour. Don't worry about it. Whereas that's not the case in real life. But they're not meant to breed complacency. They're meant to breed familiarity. And there's a big difference. The boring stuff, as I call it, is the most necessary stuff, right? So John Topper from Scale Factory did a really good talk at DevOps London a good few years ago now. I think it was 2016, 2017, called Boring is Powerful. And that was all about boring technology, MongoDB specifically, being not boring. And that concept of boring being powerful is something that really transcends technology. It's about everything because you think about the foundations of something, a proper architecture, the documentation, the team that's able to support it. That's not the sexy, shiny side of it. That's the boring side. But at the end of the day, that's the side that's really going to save you if it breaks. Doesn't matter how shiny it is if it doesn't work, right? So the correct response to a call out is, what the fuck is this? I have not seen this before, which might sound counterintuitive given what I've just said about familiarizing your engineers with incident response. Really, you should be fixing problems. This is a big should. You should be fixing problems so that the only response to a call out is, well, this is new. I've never seen this before. Now that's easier said than done, of course, given resourcing, tech debt in 100 other places, business requirements, business justification, everything. But this is like the gold standard that if you have a call out, you never see that call out again. Because otherwise, what are we doing except putting unnecessary strain on engineers, right? If someone gets called out for the same thing again and again, and yeah, it might be half an hour in the middle of the night, it might not seem a big deal. But say someone gets woken up at 3 a.m., they work on a problem for half an hour, they don't get back to sleep till 5, you've lost that engineer for the morning at least, because they're not going to be working at their optimum until later in the afternoon. At least I wouldn't be. Next on our list of simple things is sane, alerting, and monitoring. So in terms of alerting and monitoring, we need to make sure the right people know and respond. Now, that of course should include developers on call, right? Because this is DevOps, yeah? The line between your developer and your operations team is blurred. So I think developers on call looking after their own systems, system ownership is like a fundamental DevOps thing. So why should we not be doing that? Why are we putting all the strain on the poor operational folk? Yeah. Only alert on what you need to alert on. This is a real life example, this one. You have 100 servers all warning and critting at different times because of polling rates that their NFS share that they all use is approaching critical levels. Now, why do I need to be pinged every 5 minutes or so from all these different servers that, oh yeah, that same NFS share, yeah, it's 90% used. We need to think about how we're alerting people and whether we're doing it in a sensible way. And finally on this one, it's only alerting when you need to alert, which again, sounds simple, sounds like an obvious thing. Another real life example, warning, important data file doesn't exist. Call out at 4 in the morning because it doesn't exist. Now, the file is created after multiple jobs have run and created it around 8 o'clock in the morning, and that's when it's expected to be there. So why are we alerting for it not existing anytime before 8 o'clock? It seems a simple example, but you know, that's a real life thing that we've seen. And it took, I don't know, a good few days for someone to go, we don't care. We don't care if it's not there. We also need to make sure we've got the right people for the job. So I mentioned developers on call. That's the bare minimum, I guess, I'd say. I was talking to a guy at Scale Summit who worked on one of the, you know, like the holiday aggregator sites. I won't say which one, Chatham House Rules and everything. But one of those where you put in where you want to go and it finds all the different potential prices for it. And he was saying that developers would put a new aggregator client, like a new site that they would check for prices, put that live, whether it was working properly or not. But he and his platform team were the only ones on call. And he said, I get a call out if this aggregator goes down. Why is that? I says, well, why is that? Like, you're not them, you're not the aggregator. If that site over there has gone away, how is that your problem? It should be built properly to handle the site breakdown, of course, but also get your developers on call. They will feel the pain and it will get fixed quicker because that's half the battle. On the other extreme, that same conversation, someone says, well, get your product owners on call, get them responding. Now, I'm not sure where I sit on that. I think that might be a bit too far because then you're ruining their sleep and giving them issues as well. But I suppose it would show them the hurt that the incorrect prioritization of fixes is doing to the other people in their business. So the best I've seen it done is having multiple pools of engineers. This is in a previous role. Multiple pools of engineers, got dev, ops, infra, etc., and a rotation of which pool is primary. One of those pools will be the primary responder on a rotation. But each pool is on call still at the same time. And then the primary can escalate to the subject matter expert of the specific pool if needed. And in this specific example that I'm talking about, there was multiple dev pools for different domains. So it really was like quite drilled down domain specific knowledge. But multidiscipline rotors don't always work. And now it's time for an anecdote. And disclaimer on these anecdotes, because there's a couple, I'm not throwing shade on anyone because I've posted a link to this live stream on LinkedIn. So people I've worked with previously and are featured in these may spot themselves. I'm not throwing shade. It's purely to demonstrate, you know, life's rich tapestry, I guess. So this one is called FLIPPIN Network Engineers. So this is back quite a few years ago now, when I was working on a shared system admin and network ops rota. Weirdly, the delivery teams weren't on call on this rota. It was only the operational team, so make of that what you will. And we had the core database that held customer accounts and everything was a primary, secondary failover within MySQL. So alerts fire because of an unplanned, but albeit graceful, database failover. But we still alert because we want someone to see, okay, this clunky old database has failed over. Let's just nurse it back, check it's all right. He restarts MySQLD when he gets online on what is now the primary, which isn't a big deal because theoretically the failover from primary to secondary has happened, and restarting it on the new primary will just cause a failover to happen again because of replication scripts and all this, just handling it and making it nice. Never mind. Seems to be taking a while to stop. Now, we know that will be, like I say, the data integrity checks, the replication scripts, safeguarding things and making sure that MySQLD doesn't just stop without having a chance to hand over to what will be the new primary. But our network engineer knows just enough to be dangerous. He runs pkill -9 MySQLD. For those not in the know, that will kill it dead regardless of what it's doing. Multidiscipline routers don't always work if you don't know enough. But it shouldn't require know-it-alls, yeah? Or even the elusive comb-shape engineer where you have your specialty and then, your general knowledge going across and then many, many specialties all down. And it wasn't necessarily the network engineer's fault, right? What followed this, this little mix-up was a multi-hour, maybe even multi-day cleanup with what could have been resolved with a simple 10-minute call to a subject matter expert saying, MySQLD is taking a little while to stop, I'm not quite sure. Oh yeah, that'll be because it's doing its replication checks. This multidiscipline rota requires a culture where you can have a go, you can be wrong, ask for help without any fear of blame, without needing to chase your losses, because that's essentially what he was doing. He was out of his depth. He thought restarting MySQLD would fix it, even though it didn't need fixing, and it just went beyond what he knew. And it needs a culture that fosters learning, which is great for sharing the load so that you don't have to have a specific database on-call rota. You can have a shared rota. So yeah, it's great for sharing the load, but it does really depend on culture. Couple more anecdotes. And these ones are service desk. Now, I like service desks. Again, no shade, right? But these are the problems with relying on humans to parse your alerts for you. Like if you've got an alerting system and a monitoring system, why not just let the computer do the job for you? Why put a human in the middle? Because humans are useless, let's be honest. So we have eager service desks, don't we? So it's the middle of the night, I get a call. We've got a critical alert for our core database, different core database. It's funny how people name things. So dear, I'm awake because the core database is pretty critical, yeah? And a critical alert on the critical system means I'm awake. What's the alert saying? It says, MySQL replication lag, don't call out between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. It's 3 a.m. Yeah, but it had been there a while. I can guess probably since around 1 a.m. And they also go, not so eager. This is when I was working for an ISP that mainly dealt with student accommodation, multi-tenant units, like, you know, the massive blocks of flats where you put 100 gig of fiber in the bottom and copper throughout the building. I arrive 8 o'clock on a Monday, and there's a site that has been completely down since Sunday lunchtime. Oh, must have missed it. Now, this has gone through multiple shifts of service desk and been missed. So we have a quick look. So the gateway on site is completely dead. Remote KVM, completely dead, nothing at all. We know we need to get to site with a replacement kit. Now we've got a 24-hour SLA with the company. It's been down 19 hours so far. It's doable. It's in Aberdeen. Now, in both of these instances, we can't blame service desk for calling out or for not calling out, because if an alert shouldn't be there, then why is it there? It shouldn't be there. If an alert gets ignored, let's make a lot of noise about it. The same as we would for a computer system. Like if something shouldn't be there in a monitoring system that's all automated, we'd remove it. So why are we leaving it there for a human to get wrong? Computer systems are predictable and unpredictable, but at least they do what they're told most of the times. Humans don't. Humans are worse. So let's not make it difficult for them. And now we come to tuning alerts. So this monolithic third-party app, Stocksy at the front will be very familiar with. This is like a black box application that we run on a lot of servers. So as our services got busier and busier as we scale up, we noticed that the memory levels in the application are clipping critical threshold during peak times. There's quite a bit of headroom left on the actual individual servers. So let's up the threshold. We can't do much harm, can we? But we're still hitting the threshold even as we go higher and higher. So let's go to the vendor and ask what they think. The vendor pulled the thresholds out of thin air. They have absolutely no idea how much memory the application should or shouldn't be using. We set our own thresholds. We just kept going up and up until it didn't create any more. Boxes are fine, so happy days. A bit of a more recent one with some slow data processing. So towards the end of the year, data processing jobs that look at January 1st to current date data tend to get a bit slower because there's more data. Yeah. We start tripping thresholds for long-running job. What are we going to do? It's calling people out in the morning when in the afternoon on a Saturday afternoon when the football's running because of how busy it is. To change the threshold. It's amazing the reluctance that people have to change these things because, oh yeah, but then we won't know if it breaks in future. Change it back. When it starts running fast again, change it back. You're not bound by previous decisions. Like, how hard is it to change a number in an alert in the grand scheme of things? It shouldn't even be a discussion. It should be a given. Slightly opinionated, if you'll forgive me. The final thing is luck. So you can have perfect systems, alerts, but you still need luck to be on your side. So it's just my luck that on my first ever night on call as a network engineer, we dropped 10% of users' broadband connections and couldn't get them back at all. Completely dead. Sessions stuck on the old router that had bust and everything gone. And this was working for a major UK ISP. So 10% is like hundreds of thousands of users. So my first ever on-call shift was firing up the cold spare, software upgrades, rerouting traffic in the middle of the night. No one to help me, but that's just my luck. It's just my luck, really, that I worked for that same major ISP during the TalkTalk hack, if you remember that, where the guy, it was a data breach, wasn't it? Hidden by DDoS. We got a little tip off that a security researcher might have found something similar and that he was going to put an article in The Guardian. So Halloween 2015, I was not trick-or-treating. I was re-architecting networks, fixing about 5 years of tech debt in one night with a team of very, very able engineers, only to be called off about 8 a.m. on the Sunday morning saying, yeah, The Guardian aren't printing it after all. Yeah, it was bad. And of course, it's just my luck that multi-terabit per second DDoS attempts always seem to happen at the most inopportune times. Unfortunately, the details of these are all pub stories, not live stream stories, or pizza stories if you want. Again, the stream missing out. So what it comes down to a degree is this: you control what you can and you embrace what you can't. Because hopefully, if you do control what you can't control is small. We need to put the work in, whether that's as engineers, as leaders, as advocates, to stand up for people that are on call, even if that's ourselves. Because being woken up in the night is not an inconvenience, it's a health hazard. That's the basics. So thank you for listening. Here are some of the many ways you can find me online. Feel free to reach out on there or ask any questions. Cool. Any questions? Yeah.
I mean, it's really good. Big teams. How do they work more teams?
How does it work with more teams?
More teams.
Oh, small teams, sorry.
They all work well.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because you need the resource, and we're quite lucky where I am now in that we have the resource to be able to split it out. With smaller teams, I'm going to make an assumption that smaller teams have smaller systems. I know that's a big assumption, but they've either got smaller systems or systems that are more scalable. If you've got a small team working on vast monolith that needs kicking every day, then that's really red flag. But yeah, if you've got small teams, then you have to look at it a different way. You can't just put more people on it. You have to go through the prioritization of problems, the analysis, I guess, of what is causing pain, what is calling out, and look and properly get the buy-in from the business that, look, this problem that happens every week or every month takes out hours of engineering time. It's bad for mental health. It's bad for brain function. It's bad for the business ultimately. And that's what I mean by we have to advocate for changes to on call, whether we're on call or not. Yeah.
I mean, I think you've got, as a smaller business, you've got to either put your money where your mouth is, or you've got to accept the risk. You've got to accept the risk that something might not be fixed in the middle of the night, and your business will be hit.
Yeah. So I'll paraphrase for the stream. So if you're a smaller company, you have to put your money where your mouth is, or take the hit that the risk is you're not going to get it fixed in the night. And I guess it's almost like it's not their risk to take, because it's not a risk that it's not like a computer system risk or a business risk. It's a risk of the person who is on call. It's for them to say, I'm not comfortable being on call if I'm going to get called out too much. It's going to cause me mental pain. But yeah, I guess it's all potentially part of the Great Resignation and the way people are looking at work after the pandemic, and a lot of the stuff in here has just been exemplified tenfold by the change in working patterns, especially the study I mentioned about not leaving your work at work, and being available for work when you're meant to be on leisure time, not allowing you to properly wind down. That now everyone works from home and everything, like that is so much worse, because you can't leave the office. You just have to close your laptop and hope that you're not going to get, drawn to it. I'll just check my emails before bed, Yeah, it's a good point. Any other questions?
Do you see yourself being on call forever for the rest of your career?
I did think about that, and I don't. I think I've still got a few years left in me, a bit more left in the tank, but
It's irreversible by now, anyway, isn't it?
exactly, it's already irreversible, so I'm not in any rush to get off on call. But yeah, I think as you get older and stuff happens to your body and your mind anyway, I think staying on call for me it's just I can't see myself doing it long. I say long term. I'm already doing it long term. Longer term, purely because I've done quite a bit of research into it as part of this talk, and the more I read about it, the more it's like, fuck me, I should not be doing this. I should not, especially because before I started being on call, it was like shift work anyway, which screws with your head because knock was like nights, 4 nights, 4 days off, 4 days, 4 days off, 4 nights. So that messed with your head anyway. So yeah, I need to think about my health a bit, but there's still time yet.
You ever had a nightmare night where your kids are on call and sort of an unholy alliance, and you just
I've not actually. That's been all right, and it's because there's not. I've heard of people whose on-call phone has woken up the kids, right, and then they've had to juggle that. I've never had that happen, because I just put it on vibrate under my pillow and it's fine. It's like an old pager. So I've never had that. I honestly, I wouldn't know what to do. Like, what's your priority? Because, I'd say my kids, but they're not paying me to fix something. Like,
It's easier to fix systems than kids.
exactly, that's true. But you can fix a kid by putting it in front of an iPad. But you can't do that with a database cluster rebuild, can you? Just give it Peppa Pig to watch for half an hour. You have to go and fix yourself.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
I've got another one.
Yeah.
So as part of your multidisciplinary teams, do you get resistance from your non-traditional out-of-hour support? So devs might be happy to do launches at odd times, but they generally don't expect to be on call. And do you have to twist arms to get them?
Yeah, so it's tricky. Won't doubt it's tricky, but it comes down to culture again. So part of the culture here is that technical people are on call. Like, I wouldn't say regardless of their role, because we don't have data scientists on call, but we have data engineers and platform people, developers, infrastructure engineers. They're all on call. So the majority of technical people are just expected to be on call, but it's not expected to be on call like you have this role, therefore you are on call. It's you will be invited to join the on-call rota because of the role that you do. So there are some people, of course, that don't want to do on-call, and that's fine because it's an extra, it's an optional extra. It's encouraged because, it helps the business, it helps share the load, you get more money because you paid a retainer. But yeah, it's not forced upon you, so we don't particularly see any resistance. Any more? Cool. Thank you very much. Hello to the stream. There's no questions, but people were putting hi, so hello to the stream. Cool. That's it. Thank you very much.